Morning, Paul.
Good morning, guys.
Welcome,
Good to see you both.
welcome to the
Bright and early
Lars
where
and
you are.
Claus Carnivore Show. And are you coming into us today from Paraguay?
Yeah. I live in Paraguay full time.
Okay. So been following your posts for quite a while now, a couple of years, I think. And I have to say, if it's yourself or someone else, you the Paraguayan tourist ministry should hire you because you make Paraguay look to be this fabulous place. Is that in fact true?
It is a fabulous place. Yeah, obviously we highlight the most fabulous parts. But yeah, I love Paraguay. I'm planning on living here a long time. And yeah, I think Paraguay is an undiscovered gem. So yeah,
Nice.
it's all true. It's not filters or anything on that on our Twitter.
How long have you lived there?
So me and my business partner Cam, who does most of the tweeting, most of the tweets on Twitter, we've lived here just over 2 years. We escaped Australia late 2021 during the really harsh lockdowns, and yeah, we both decided we want to start, a new life here. We just ran into each other in Australia, and yeah, we were moving here at the same time, so it all worked out.
Wow.
Amazing.
And did you have a career in Paraguay before that, or did you just start up when you got there?
No, so originally I was a crypto investor, and I'd done okay with that. So, I wanted to sort of leave Australia, and I was looking into different countries, and I stumbled across Paraguay. And then if you follow crypto at all, last year wasn't that great in the market. So, it prompted me, and Cam was doing his own thing, but we decided to start, this project, which is
Oh,
what we've been
wow.
working.
So it's pretty new.
Yeah, over a year now we've been running, but it's just been, consistent growth. The world's starting to learn about Paraguay.
Wow.
Fantastic.
So one stat that I know about Paraguay that I heard about, although I might bungle up the numbers, is how many people live there and how many cows live there?
Okay. I honestly don't know that off the top of my head. There's roughly around 7 million people living here. I know that. What did you hear for cattle? Probably a lot more.
Yeah, I heard beef is one of your biggest exports.
I mean, absolutely. So, yeah, it's one of the main industries in Paraguay. And even so, Cam and I went to go visit this community in the north of Paraguay. So we effectively, spent about 6 or 7 hours driving across the country. And, in the middle of the country, it's just pasture with cattle on it, just hours and hours of pasture with cattle. So that's basically all that's out there when you start to leave the city.
Interesting.
Interesting. So it's a very agricultural based culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe it's cattle and soy are the main exports of Paraguay. Yeah, obviously it's still a country that's developing, still catching up, and yeah, so its main exports are like you say, agriculture.
What are your gun control laws there?
So in Paraguay, you do have the right to own firearms. To have a firearm in your house is quite, very easy, very legal. Effectively, how it works is, rather than having, say, a gun permit in general, in other countries, you have a permit you pay for each firearm. And effectively, it's like maybe a $150, $200 fee that's on top of the cost of buying a firearm. Now, they're very happy for you to have them in your house. It's more difficult to sort of carry them in public. So it's not kind of like Texas where you can carry it around in your belt or anything like that. Usually you keep them in your house here.
Interesting.
So maybe just a question from my side, maybe if you don't mind, if we just jump into some carnivore things. first. I'm really curious to come back to the to Paraguay and the questions about that as well. But what are you? Do you live a carnivore lifestyle? And if yes, when did you start that? And how's that going?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently I'm not on the carnivore diet. I did follow it for about 2 months at the start of this year. The reason I started following it is, I'd gained a bit of weight just before Christmas, as you do, with all the food and alcohol and all that. So I wanted to try it. Yeah, so I followed the diet here. It was extremely easy to follow it here. The reason I stopped following the diet currently is I sort of injured myself, and I'm still recovering from an injury, and I wasn't really going to the gym as much, and I kind of fell off. But yeah, I have followed it in the past here in Paraguay.
Yes, as it happens. Is it popular, or is it just is it not really known in Paraguay generally?
Yeah, so in generally the culture of Paraguay is kind of like, I like to think it was like going back to the 90s in all the good ways, and maybe they're a little bit behind. So I don't think, kind of like a modern health discovery like carnivore diet has really started to filter into the general Paraguayan population. That said, there's a lot of the majority of expats here are entrepreneurs. They're working on their businesses. They're trying to optimize their life in different ways. And yeah, so there's a lot of the expat community here that's on the diet.
Yeah, interesting. What did you when you did your longest period? What apart from losing weight, I'm assuming you lost some weight. What did you notice any other benefits of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say if I'm not on the diet, I tend to get like my skin gets irritated, like I'll get like red patchy skin. And that seemed to go away. And then also obviously, your energy is much more stable. So you just sort of have like a stable baseline of energy throughout the day, rather than sort of ups and downs, which you can have from eating. So yeah, I definitely noticed those benefits as well. But yeah, also the weight just fell off was the main thing.
Yeah, it's pretty effective, I think, for most people. What about, did you do any fasting or intermittent fasting or anything like that?
No, well, I tried to. I would break my fast, I guess, at about 2 p.m. So I'd sort of, eat usually two sort of meals in the afternoon, and that's how I follow it. So fasting to an extent, but not days of fasting or anything.
No, yeah. So it's a kind of a time restricted eating, I think, is the official label on that.
Right.
What about when you did your when you were following 100% carnivore? What was the sort of the social situations? I imagine you have quite an active social life with with the work you do. And
Right.
what questions did you get? What explanations did you have to give?
I mean, so in Paraguay, right? The people that decide to choose Paraguay are definitely more on the open-minded, spectrum. Like we get all sorts of interesting characters here. Most people are sort of libertarian, or, like I said, entrepreneurs. So usually, as weird as I try to be, I'm the least interesting guy at the table usually. So that wasn't ever too much for a problem. What's kind of interesting about Paraguay, right, is you're at a restaurant, you order a steak. And the steak will literally be the steak, and usually they'll accompany it with some manioca, which is like a local root vegetable, and that's it, right? That's the whole plate. So it's quite normal for Paraguayans just to sort of have a dish that's purely meat focused without anything else. So ordering out's quite simple in that regard. You just don't have to eat the manioca and just eat the steak.
Yeah, simple.
Yeah, I get the sense that
well. Sorry, go on.
I said I get the sense I love agricultural based cultures that are based in ranching and stuff. I find those cultures to be beautiful and nice to be around. And I guess the population of Paraguay must be very healthy then with all of this, because it seems like they eat a ton of steak.
They are very healthy, but unfortunately, that's not their only habits. There's definitely, it's kind of funny, right? Because Paraguay has a big German influence here,
Uh,
and there's a lot of beer drinking here. Like, you'll not everyone, but a majority of the men, they drink a lot of beer. So you see a lot of the older population, have a little bit of a gut, and say from drinking too much beer. It's good as an expat if you're trying to find a girl because there's probably less competition with fit guys. But yeah, besides the steak, I'd say they're fairly healthy, fairly happy, but I wouldn't say they're, superhumans on the carnivore diet here or anything like that.
okay.
Did you
It's hard to.
sorry, did you have when you started the carnivore period, did you have any negative effects of doing it?
I would say the problem is like a lot of people, myself included, you rely on different foods or whatever to handle, like a bad day or poor mood. So
Yeah.
if I had a stressful day, I'd like to have like a beer, at the end of the day. And then when you take that away, you have to deal with, the sort of the negative emotion and all that that maybe you were using for my case, like having a beer to deal with. And that's hard, right? Because you don't have that crutch anymore. So that's definitely difficult. I think though, after about a week or so, you start to develop and you start to sort of get over that desire or reaching for that food or whatever you do when you feel like you need it.
Yeah, exactly. So, it sounds very familiar. in the beginning, a lot of adjusting to do, but most of it actually more of a, I would say, psychological, mental habit type of stuff, rather than any negative physical things.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you have to deal with going into keto as well, right? So
Yeah.
I have had done the keto diet before, so I know what that's like, but there's, your energy's a bit weird at first to begin with also.
Yeah. What about the healthcare system in Paraguay? If you go to a doctor and tell them, okay, I'm going to do this, are they going to try to push statins on you, or what's it like? Maybe you never went to the doctor.
Yeah, no, I'm interested. I'm trying to think how they would react, because in one way here, it's extremely pro-meat, right? Don't move to Paraguay if you're a vegan. There's no vegan restaurants here. They barely even know what that word means here. So it's not like they'll have any bias against meat, perhaps like they do in the rest of the world. But then, like I said, in some ways in the medical system, Paraguay lags the rest of the world. So they might just be, giving people the cookie cutter information that they've been told from, other health organizations around the world. So yeah, I mean, I would probably say they'd just give the generic answer that they've been told, to be honest.
Yeah, same as everywhere else, by the way. So yeah, probably no big difference. Yeah. Lars, do you have any questions on the? Sorry.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the geography of Paraguay. So you're in Asuncion,
That's correct, yes.
and now how long does it take to drive across the country?
Yeah, so to drive across to the other side, if you go where I am all the way to the where are we? We're on the west, and then drive to the east, it's about 5.5 hours. Yeah, to go to the Brazilian border on the other side of the country, and it's about 5.5 hours to go all the way down south as well. So the country is really not that big.
Well, it's like about 1,000, so it's about 1,000-kilometer round trip to get across of it.
I would say so. I'd have to look at a map.
In Canada, we do everything by hours, how many hours it takes to drive somewhere.
Right.
So and I have driven around Australia, by the way, so it's a huge country. But and now in Paraguay, it's generally flat throughout it, but then when you get to the west, there's some mountains.
There's not really any large mountains in Paraguay. It's kind of like, like I guess you'd call it a savanna or plains for the most of the country. The dense sort of forest and the Amazon's more in Brazil and in the northern countries. And yeah, if you were to keep going west, you'd hit like Chile and Argentina, and they have like the beautiful mountain ranges there. And that's part of the reason why, here we go. That's part of the reason why Paraguay, I feel, is a little bit undiscovered still. Like, it's a great country to live, but in terms of touristic things, variety, it doesn't have it like other South American countries do.
Yeah, I'm just going to zoom out so people who are not big into geography can get a little bit of a feel for it. So we've got Paraguay in the middle with Asunción, the capital city, and if we zoom out, we've got Brazil to the north, Argentina to the south, and then we've got North America when we go further north here. So just for orientation.
That's right. You can see we're tucked right in the middle there. Notable is there's no coastline in Paraguay, which obviously you're not going to get a beach here, but it does have other advantages. And yeah, you can see the mountain range to the west there, and you can see the real dense sort of jungles more in Brazil and also in the north, Ecuador, Peru, that sort of area.
So where are people in Paraguay, where are they typically traveling for weekend to other countries? Are they traveling around a lot? What are the roads like?
I mean, the roads are okay, right? So what's interesting about Paraguay is basically very few people pay taxes here, yeah? Which is great, but it means that, you're not going to get roads to the same level as you would, in first world countries. Where people travel, I guess, really depends on, their wealth level. Most Paraguayans, have quite a humble income, and they will generally travel, they call it the interior. So in like the rural areas, they'll usually have their villages that they'll go and travel for the weekend. Wealthier people, you can easily fly, within 2 hours to many parts of Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Bolivia. So they'll probably have a short flight to any of those places. You can also drive to Brazil and Argentina quite easily.
Yes. How long is it to drive from Asunción to Argentina?
Well, if you wanted to drive to Buenos Aires, the capital, it'd probably be about 15 hours. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, but I mean, when I say Argentina is a big country as well. So there's lots of nice parts that are closer that people visit.
I see. I have this mental picture of myself in my 50s living in South America, just exploring everywhere by 4x4 and dirt bike, eating steak constantly with a beautiful South American woman. Is this a reasonable dream to have?
I mean, it sounds crazy. It is. It's definitely attainable. It's definitely attainable. So you sort of covered some of the main, I'd say, benefits of Paraguay. The steak. Obviously, dating here is very good, especially because there's not many other expats, right? So expats that are here, you're kind of like an exotic commodity almost. So that helps you with the dating. And yeah, there's a lot sort of outdoor type activities like motorcycling, ATV, that sort of thing, because that's sort of what the country offers in regards to pastimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say it's possible. You know what? So you said you're a Canadian. That's correct?
Yeah, I live in British Columbia.
Right. What's so interesting right now is the most calls we get from anyone at the moment is Canadians.
Yeah.
So even in 2 hours after this call, I'm going to the airport to pick up a Canadian couple that's moving down. So there's a lot of Canadians moving here at the moment.
Yeah. They our Canadian government, I would say that 15% of Canadians have just been completely, the Canadian government put just completely fear into us based on it wasn't just one thing, it was a series of things. First it was 2 weeks of masks, and now it's everything from drag time story hour in the schools to Canada's really really corrupted, I would say, by the globalists right now. We're hoping that we have a new politician called Pierre Poilievre. He's the leader of the opposition. And my fingers are crossed that he gets in. But at the same time, I've seen this move to more the globalist power narrative happening more and more over the last few years. And we have no gun rights here. Like it's impossible. Like they took my guns away. It's impossible to to own guns and to use them with any sense of freedom here. And I really feel that if a country, if you can't have guns easily, eventually the government can do whatever they want to you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I noticed it. Just particularly Canadians are very unhappy with the direction of the country and the politics and the policies there at the moment.
I got the sense it was similar in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. I was living in Melbourne, which was the city that had the strictest lockdowns in Australia. We had lockdowns on and off for 18 months. And yeah, there were times where you weren't allowed to leave your house for more than 2 hours at a time, a bit like a prisoner getting some sun each day. There were curfews. Like I remember catching up with some friends and it was 8 p.m. So they had to quickly scatter and leave to go back to their house because they didn't want the police to catch them on the streets after 8. Like it was crazy.
Yeah, totally crazy. Totally crazy. Especially, we come from a Western culture, and I think I grew up kind of taking my freedom for granted, but not really. Also, I feel entitled to my freedom. I'm willing to take it if it's not given to me. And I remember during the pandemic, I was working away from home. So I was on my way to work, and in the Canadian mountains, they had a police stop check, and the cop stopped me, and he's like, "Oh, it's essential travel only." I said to him, "Do you see what's happening here?" I said, "I'm trying to go to work, and I got you, a cop, bothering me about it." And he was, yeah, apologetic and stuff, but I don't think you can put the toothpaste back in the tube when these sorts of things happen. If it happened once, the next time it happens, it's going to be much worse. That's kind of I'm preparing for when the pandemic happened. I had a thought that my youngest daughter, who's 4, might not die in a free country in Canada, and if I didn't do something, that I would be responsible for that. So my own long-term goal is to get that South American passport. And then, so another question I wanted to ask you is, so I come down there, I put my money in the Paraguayan bank, and I get my permanent residency. And how easy is it then to get your kids their passports?
Right. So firstly, just with that, they have changed the rules now. Yeah. So you no longer need to put money in the bank in Paraguay. So that's the good thing. The annoying thing is first you get a temporary residency that's 2 years, then you extend it to the permanent residency. So that's how the process is working now. In regards to the citizenship, you would first have to get the citizenship yourself, and then I assume there'd be some sort of thing where your kids can receive the citizenship, but to be honest, I haven't had a client that's done that yet and passed it on to their kids, so I'm not particularly sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Most likely they would also get the residency with you, and then after 3 years, they could apply for citizenship like you could.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting. Paul, what's the political situation? I don't know what else to call it, but I mean, we're talking about surprising draconian measures that we've seen in Australia, in Canada, and in many European countries as well. What's the political system like, and is it, you know, how? I'm assuming it's very stable. I haven't heard anything since Alfredo Stroessner, so I guess it's very quiet.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, after the dictatorship ended, Paraguay became a democracy. Almost consistently every election since then, there's I'd say a center-right party called the Colorado Party, and they've ruled the country effectively since then. I'd say in terms of politics, Paraguay is probably one of the most consistently right-leaning countries in all of South America. You see it, everywhere here. It's very different. There's really sort of none of like the woke stuff here or the gender stuff. People are very traditional. Even like you see when people like how people dress, they tend to dress a bit more conservatively. So the benefit though of all this is that the government has been quite conservative, with their fiscal policy. So Paraguay hasn't experienced the same, crazy inflation like it has with places like Argentina and Venezuela, where they're just printing money nonstop. Paraguay's been fairly pro-business and trying to, market itself as a stable place to invest and to, park your wealth in South America. And so what you see right now in Asuncion is a lot of money is fleeing places, not just the West, people like us, but also people from Brazil and Argentina. They're worried about the direction their countries are going, so they're moving to Paraguay. And in Asuncion, there's a lot of real estate. There's a lot of development happening quite rapidly here as all that sort of international investment moves in.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Very
The other benefit I would say, just to is, it seems every time I visit another South American country, there's always some protests, there's civil unrest, people are unhappy. I'm not saying things are perfect here in Paraguay, they're not, but there's just not that level of discontent or, protests or people just angry or political, like you see in many other parts of South America, or even, in the States and other parts of the world where, people are very divided, whether you're right or left. Most people, it doesn't really bother them. It's not, arguing and worrying about politics is not something that really is on people's minds here as much.
Yeah, it's definitely like COVID socially took out a certain percentage of people in Canada, and it's on both sides. It was the pro-vax people, but I also see a lot of the anti-vax people have also completely lost the plot. It's become their whole identity, and I think one of the things that appealed to me about, like, I grew up in an agricultural community, and I find agricultural based cultures and communities to be the best when they're based on older values. And I was going to ask you also, is there a big equestrian culture in Paraguay?
That's a good question. I would say it's definitely more in Argentina with the gaucho culture and
Yes.
the Argentinian Brazilian cowboys. I would say less so here. And part of it might be, this is my speculation, Paraguay culture is still very much influenced by the Guarani people. That are the Guarani people. They were like the tribal people that were here, when the Spanish arrived. And that culture, many traditions are still present in the society, and they obviously didn't have a very big equestrian culture. They didn't have access to horses. So definitely more in Brazil and Argentina, you'd get that, I would say.
Okay.
Maybe a few questions, a few more questions about the let's say entrepreneurship and citizenship in Paraguay. So let's say if most of the people that you help emigrate to Paraguay, you say they're entrepreneurs, and so they have functioning businesses that they transfer to Paraguay, or is it easy to set up? What's the business climate like? Can you expect to be able to base a new business there and get some things going?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you think about the average wage for a Paraguayan is about $9,000 a year. Yeah. So I don't encourage necessarily people to come here and just try to work in the local economy. You know, you could, but you know, we're Westerners, we're probably used to a slightly higher standard of living. In which case, you know, I don't recommend coming here being an English teacher, for example.
Yeah.
Obviously, besides the meat, one of the main benefits of Paraguay is it's a territorial tax country. So what this means is income that you earn that's from foreign sources overseas, you don't have to pay taxes on. For this reason, it's a very attractive option for, you know, people who entrepreneurs that have an online business, but maybe you're just a remote worker, you know, and you're working for a company that's overseas, or maybe you're a retiree, or you're managing a portfolio. Any of those things, it's very advantageous. So what this does is quite interesting, is almost all the expats here in some way are, you know, entrepreneurs. They're doing something online. And I think the real benefit of that is your whole peer group is sort of in that mentality, and that's just sort of what's normal, and it really encourages you to be a better entrepreneur, or you know, just the networking and being able to, you know, learn from each other. I think is a real benefit that comes from that.
Yes.
Oh
well. You also mentioned in regards to business setups and how all that works. Generally, the majority of people, they will set up their business in sort of a simpler, easier jurisdiction, usually like a US LLC. They'll run their business. So the business will be based in the US, but then they'll pay themselves, you know, to their personal accounts from that business. And that tends to be the favorable thing. You can start a business in Paraguay, you know, and using the Paraguayan versions of that, but it's like, it's all in Spanish, you know, it'd be harder to get international banking to do your payments. It's just generally favorable to use things like a US LLC.
Yeah, I see you can get these Wyoming LLC set up for $125.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'd say that's some of the most common options doing that. And then you get, you know, you're able to do your payments very easily through things like Stripe. It's just superior than trying to use some Paraguayan banks and all that to do it, you know?
Yeah, sure. And I guess you could, I suppose you can just use any, let's say, advanced jurisdiction to set up your LLC or your bank accounts outside of your old country and outside of Paraguay.
Exactly right. And this is, you know, flag theory, where you're trying to set up different aspects of your life around the world.
Yeah.
You know, I love Paraguay, but I don't put all my eggs in the Paraguayan basket. You know, you want to have bank accounts, maybe other residencies, other passports spread out all around the world if possible, because, you know, who knows what's going to happen in 20 years, you know, whatever. You want to have options.
Sure. Good point.
But the Paraguayan passport must make it very easy to travel within South America also.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you basically have visa-free access to all the countries in Latin America. What's really neat though is, so when you get your residency, you get the national ID card, and this is called a cedula, right? And just using the cedula, not your passport, you can actually travel visa-free to Brazil, Uruguay, and Argentina. Paraguay is part of something called the Mercosur, which is kind of like a mini European Union of just those 4 countries. So what's kind of neat, like when I go to Argentina, I don't even need to bring my Australian passport. I just show my cedula, they just let me in, you know, like I'm a citizen. So I found that very neat. It's especially cool, you know, if you don't want necessarily your government to know what you're doing at all time, this is an alternative travel document you can use.
Interesting. Yeah.
What's the local culture doing for work in Asuncion? What's the what's like the great career aspirations for a local Paraguayan in Asuncion who's in their early 20s, mid 20s?
That's interesting. Right. Well, I mean, there's so many different types of people, right? I guess the majority is Paraguayans. They're probably still a little bit more risk adverse. So they would probably, I know like having a job in a bank or something can be considered quite prestigious. Yeah, so some sort of larger corporation for them would probably be that's what they would like. I would say part of the benefits foreigners have when we come here is we tend to be more entrepreneurial, and we're more willing to take risks, open businesses, that sort of thing. Like, it's funny, I was speaking to my girlfriend the other day, and she said, 10 years ago in Paraguay, in my house, there was only one internet, and it was like really slow, and that's all the access we had to information. So people they're just starting to catch up, with the idea of like easy access to information, the internet, entrepreneurship, working online. That's only come in the last decade, so they're not really, like I said, trying to create those big businesses. They're more the traditional thing, a nice, stable job that's sort of high status in Paraguay.
I see.
Yeah. I was thinking about the no, hold on, I forgot. I lost my train of thought here. Lars, I don't know if you have a question, and I'll get my
Yeah, I
train.
wanted to ask about so there's local soccer in Asuncion, and I see that they're building, there's quite nice high rises are going up right now. So they
Yeah.
got sports, they got construction developers. Who are those condos being sold to?
Yeah, so I would say the majority is wealthier Brazilians and Argentinians.
Oh, gotcha. So
Yeah, so Brazilians, Argentinians, they're more used to like living in an apartment building, big cities. Paraguayans, the favorite thing for them is to have a house, have the family. Every Sunday you have an asado, which is the barbecue. That's the Paraguayan dream. Whereas foreigners from big cities, they're quite happy to live in a nice high-rise apartment. So I would say, yeah, it's not Paraguayans buying those things. Yeah, obviously football, you mentioned that, it's very, very popular here, very common. You'll see wherever you are, you'll see like Paraguayans watching some sort of football game on the TV, 90% of the time. That's what they're watching.
so how much is it to buy if you come down there? How to buy let's say 10 acres?
Oh, wow.
If you wanted to buy 10 acres within an hour of Asuncion and put yourself half a dozen cows on it, what would that cost you?
I would have to, I sort of wrote this down because usually what we do is I don't pretend to be the expert in regards to the real estate outside. I wrote this down. I can look up my notes if you give me 2 minutes.
Because that's my dream too, is just a big family, eat steak all day Sunday, have lots of children around,
But
many
Lars,
wives.
are you sure you want to be in Asuncion and not somewhere else? The question I forgot was about languages, and
Yeah.
I watched one of the videos. You were talking to I think a guy of German descent. He sounded like a
Yeah,
German.
Johnny.
Yeah, Johnny.
Yeah.
And so there seems to be, I forgot what the city was called, but there is more English and German spoken elsewhere than in Asuncion.
Right. So Johnny lives in a city called Loma Plata, which is a Mennonite community in the north of the country. So there's many Mennonites of German descent in the north. And so, yeah, their particular communities, English, German is going to be more of a norm. But you're right. In Paraguay is Asuncion, it's Spanish, Spanish, Spanish. So Usually how it works is the further a country is south from the United States, the lower the level of English is here, right? And Paraguay, as you saw on the map, we're pretty far down the bottom. So I would say on average, maybe 5% of people could speak English here. So it's if you come here, part of it would be have the intention to continually learn and to achieve fluency in Spanish. It's just going to make your whole life. I know guys that have lived here 5, even guys lived here 8 years. They still can't speak Spanish. I don't recommend that. It's possible. He seems happy enough, but I would recommend if you're going to come here, yeah, that's a drawback. You have to put in the effort to learn. Thankfully, for English speakers like us, Spanish is one of the easiest second languages to learn.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
The other thing that also makes it kind of interesting is there's a second main language in Paraguay called Guarani. So this is the language of the indigenous people to Paraguay. And when you go more, if you're in the big cities, it's more Spanish. But as you go into more rural areas, the people here sort of talk a mixture of Spanish and Guarani. In Asuncion, it's 92% Spanish. In the rural areas, you might be 50% Spanish, 50% Guarani. So that's also something to keep in mind.
Yeah, interesting.
So what would you recommend for a trip if a group came into Asuncion for a week? What would they do in Paraguay to get a sense of it and a feel of it and eat the best steaks there?
Yeah, so I guess first it's right when someone comes in, we give them just like a guide of like all the really good restaurants that we recommend. If you want to eat the steaks like you see on our Twitter, that's where you can go. See, in Asuncion, you could do all the tourist stuff in Asuncion in about 2 days. Yeah, like I said, it's not a New York, it's not a Paris, right? It's a nice city, but that's not what it's about. I would probably go, the really nice attraction is when you go to the other side of Paraguay, there's a place called Foz de Iguazu. It's these waterfalls, these huge majestic waterfalls that are one of the 8 natural wonders of the world. So I would definitely go there, check that out. Then there's also a very nice place in the south called Encarnacion that you can go. It's a smaller city. It's on a nice river there. That's a very nice place to visit as well. So I would say they're the main things. But again, like I said, Paraguay is a country to live, set up your life, your friends, your gym, your hobbies, your steak, all that. That's what it's good at. It's not 1,000 different tourist things to do. You won't find that here.
I see.
Yeah, it's like a home in a way.
Yeah, it's like a home.
Yeah, it's like a home. So Asuncion has about 2 million people. And yeah, it is what you make it. If you put in the time to make good friends, have good hobbies, get into good habits, it's an amazing place to be. But yeah, you can't rely on 10 different, entertainment options every night of the week like you can in other big cities.
I live in a small place too.
Okay.
I used to live in a big city, but I was lucky. I got out just before the pandemic and I moved to the least woke, most idyllic place I could find in Canada.
It sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, it was a good idea. So what are your goals for Paraguay? Are you staying or are you going to set a family up there? Or?
Yeah, so my original goal, which I still plan on doing, it's changed a little bit, is what's cool about the Paraguayan residency and the tax residency is you only need to be here 4 months a year to take advantage of the tax benefits. So my long-term goal was to do my 4 months in Paraguay. That's my home, that's my base of operations, but I wanted to spend the rest of the 8 months traveling. I really want to explore more of Brazil and Argentina. Now, what's happened is, I've met a girl here, things are getting more serious. So it's likely I'll probably spend more time of the year here in Paraguay, but I definitely want to keep traveling, exploring, getting other residencies and that sort of thing. So I'd say that's what is long term. In terms of plan B, yeah, we just want to keep getting better at what we do, helping people set up their lives here, and becoming the number one, immigration service in Paraguay, ideally.
Fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Sounds great.
It does sound great. So Klaus, are we going to go to Paraguay
Yeah,
sometime?
let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah, me too. I
I'm
would
probably
love
not
to.
You know,
in the I'm not in the key demographic, but who cares?
Yeah, who
Um,
cares?
but I'd love to come and visit. And obviously, I've never been to Paraguay. I've been to Brazil many times on business, but not Paraguay. So
well,
quite.
if either of you do decide to visit us in Asuncion, Cam and I will take you out. We'll just line it up. We'll just line up the table. We'll give you guys so much steak that even you'll be begging for mercy by the end of it.
We're begging for mercy. Yeah, sounds great.
I have
Nobody's.
a, I have to tell you a joke I told Klaus the other day that I'm going to tell you the same joke. I think I read it on Twitter and it makes me laugh about once a day. It said, if you haven't slept with a Brazilian woman, you're basically gay.
Oh, you know, my girlfriend's Paraguayan, so I would say no comment because you
Yeah,
know
better be careful.
yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to
But
get.
no, there's definitely the women down here. There's definitely something that's different than Western women, and yeah, hopefully your audience is lucky enough to experience that for themselves.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Another point wasn't there a war over a soccer game between Paraguay and Uruguay?
Over a soccer game?
Yeah, I remember
There has
reading this.
been wars in the.
What's that?
I'm not familiar with that. No, sorry, unless that's some joke or a reference. No, I haven't heard of that.
I should look it
What
up
is
again.
interesting though, if you want to hear about crazy wars, is so there was this, it was called the War of the Triple Frontiers, yeah? And
Yeah,
back in the day, Paraguay was much bigger, much more powerful, and it went to war simultaneously against Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, all at the same time. And during that time, they had this dictator and he refused to surrender, right? So Paraguay literally fought until there was only 10% of the male population
I
left
heard about
before they
this.
surrendered. And so there's all these memes and jokes. It's like, you see this meme, it's like being a man in 1870, you know, and it's literally like one guy with like 10 women all just there like staring at him, you know, because back then it was literally, yeah, like 5 to 10 women for each man. It was crazy.
Unbelievable.
What's
Yeah.
it like now?
I mean, obviously the ratio has isn't that good anymore, as you would expect. But I do find it's kind of interesting in the culture here. It seems like that's kind of persisted, where women seem to put up with a lot more, I'd say, bad behavior from local men here than they would perhaps in other parts of the world. So they're definitely, they give you a little bit more leeway here. You know, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, you can make up your own mind. But yeah, that
Lars,
still persists a little
Lars, you can only have one.
I don't know about that. Women in Canada don't put up with absolutely anything.
How do you know they're
Yeah,
women?
Yeah, right.
I mean, I don't want to get too deep into this, but I'll tell you what's kind of interesting. Out of the clients that come to Paraguay, 95% are men, right? And so then you ask yourself, why is that? You know, is it maybe men realize that they're not getting the best deal in their home countries, and maybe women are probably getting a better deal? I don't know. It's something to consider. You know, why is it only it's men are deciding to leave?
So it's 95% men coming.
For our clients, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, you know, our marketing is probably more man centric, but still, you know, the majority is men deciding to leave the West.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they the emperor was revealed without his clothes on. They showed their intentions. And I mean, on a more serious level, I believe that these globalist agendas and these globalist movements, I think we might see an ebb and a flow to some degree, depending on which party is actually in power in a specific country. But at when I look at the progress of the globalists over the last 20 years, if they make the same progress in another 20 years, then I'm going to be showing up at the police station for my 2 ounces of steak, if I'm lucky. And so I see it on a long enough time horizon. I see most all of our freedoms either completely evaporating or administratively evaporating. So we might have them on paper to some degree, but administratively you can't apply them to any level. So I think that your business, I could only see it growing, because I don't see freedoms rushing back into.
Right.
And again, it was especially the Commonwealth countries like New Zealand, Australia, Canada, because we don't have any gun laws here like they did in Florida and Texas. We had really nothing to say. I really feel like if the population has guns, it just changes that entire dynamic that the government has with them and their population. Here, it's just a totally different mindset. So definitely something that I pay attention to on a regular basis. And yeah, if I had to guess, I don't think that my children will be dying in Canada.
Yeah, maybe we have to come to Paraguay quickly.
I mean, what you say is true, right? And it is grim, you know. So yeah, it's good to know, at least for now. And you're right, who knows where the world's going, but there is other options out there. Like, people, you don't just have to stay in your country and put up with it, you know.
No.
Like, yeah, you can, whether it's Paraguay, somewhere else. Like, it's like, yeah, this famous saying, go where you're treated best, right? And I think everyone should do that. And if more people did that, governments wouldn't take their citizens for granted as much as they do.
Yeah, probably that's true. And I think most people, anyway, most people, even if they're unhappy, they're still, you know, for most people, it's a big step to say, okay, I'm gonna go to a country in South America, or a country very far away, and I have to learn a new language and all these things. I think I think that's quite an interesting filter to have, and I think the people that you are dealing with, that are your customers, my guess would be that you are not, they're not the typical average person, and they probably have a 100-fold entrepreneurial spirit, and probably also cognitively better positioned than most other people. So
there's definitely a filter there. Yeah. I mean, like, I like to joke, you know, all our clients seem to be crazy in one way or another, you know.
Yeah,
you kind of have to
yeah, I didn't want to say that, but I guess
yes. No, I guess
yes, but so what?
You know? Yeah.
Well, Paul, when we're ready to come down to Paraguay for a visit, you're our man. We'll call you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to host you guys. And yeah, thanks for giving me the time to talk about Paraguay today. And, you know, after speaking to you guys, I'm thinking I might do another round of Carnivore starting in January as well.
Yeah, go do it. Do it. You'll feel much better.
Yeah.
How old,
absolutely.
Paul, how old are you?
I'm 37.
No children?
Not yet that I know of, no.
Very diplomatic.
So you got to eat 500 or 600 pounds of steak in 2024, and I guarantee you'll have a child.
I'm sure my girlfriend would love to hear that. You know, she's already started to push. So okay, that's good to know.
Go for it.
Excellent, Paul.
Excellent.
Yeah,
all right,
it's
Paul,
great to have
inspiring.
you. Great to have you on the podcast, and you know, maybe I hope we can have you again sometime, and then we can dig maybe a little bit deeper into some of the themes. I think it's you know, I never thought about Paraguay until Lars talked about it, and I'm getting more and more interested and enthusiastic about the idea. So So I think a trip is in our future to come and see what it's like.
Definitely it is. Definitely we're going to come down and eat steak with Paul.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. And I'm sure you, Cam, as well, would love to join. And yeah, you're always welcome. If you want to invite me back, I'd love to be back sometime.
Thanks a lot,
Okay,
Paul. We'll
Paul.
chat with you soon, and keep inspiring with your beautiful Plan B Paraguay posts. We love them.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good time. Well, Klaus, it sounds like Paraguay is worth a visit. And
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, they're paying $4 US a pound for the top quality steak.
Yeah, it's I think it's highly interesting. I think there are probably a lot of aspects that we didn't cover, but I think for I'm ready to jump into all kinds of stuff very quickly always, but I think my process would be go visit for a week or 10 days or whatever, 2 weeks. Go visit and, like, as a tourist, try and get a little bit of a feel for the place, and then sort out a plan in terms of how does this fit with the work I do, and where do you need to set up what kind of bank account and other things and infrastructure and things like that. I do a methodical approach, but I think the first bit for me would be to visit and see, and kind of just get a feel for the place and see if it feels good. Obviously,
well,
I
we'll
feel pretty
plan a trip there
enthusiastic.
because I'm dying. I would love to go and see. I think when I would go, I would want to just rent a truck or a motorbike and see some of the country.
Yes.
Geography is very important to me. Wherever I end up, I want to have very nice geography.
Yes, and I'm just looking here at the map. Let me just share the screen here, because I was just wondering about the what's the climate and the weather like. But I wonder if this is where are we?
I think you got to go to the right.
No, I'm just trying to find. Hold on.
There it is.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I was wondering about the climate, but it's probably Asuncion is a little bit further south than São Paulo, so yeah, nice warm weather all the time. It's not too far, away from equator.
Sao Paulo and Rio.
Got equator is here.
Yeah.
And I don't know how far, but I'm kind of guessing that the weather is probably never the weather in Finland. So
no, and you've traveled to Brazil quite a bit, eh?
Yeah, I've been to Brazil many times on business, and but but I've actually never been to Rio, so business is not really in the kind of industries I'm in. The business is not there.
Well, it kind of bridges us to that other thing too, is to put together a carnivore retreat.
Yeah, we could have maybe I think I kind of like the idea of having our first one with Max down in Portugal.
Me too.
And then learn from there. Set up a have some good sessions, have some nice meat, have a good relaxing time, and but also use the time to maybe maybe see what we can do in business terms, and what can we develop on the basis of carnivore lifestyle, something which is
absolutely. It's where did I see that? I saw a stat the other day about it was a Google stat regarding searches.
Yeah.
And like the carnivore lifestyle, it's still so new and niche. And when I look at it, it's just not widely distributed enough. It needs it needs its Atkin moment, somebody to
Yeah,
popularize it.
for sure. And I think of course, because we're well into it. I think, at least speaking for myself, my feeling is sometimes that it's oh yeah, okay, it's completely obvious, and
Yeah, me too.
but really it isn't. And just thinking back about my own kind of attitude towards it. I mean, I started out with ketogenic pretty much 4 years ago, and when you look up ketogenic stuff, you get a lot of carnivore stuff as well. And honestly, I've at the time I felt that's totally extreme. Why the hell would I do that? If I can have a ketogenic lifestyle where I can kind of, have a variety of foods and other things. But the interesting thing to me, at least, was that as time passed, my ketogenic foods were less and less variety and more just meat. And after about 18 months, I was in fact pretty much carnivore without having made any decision that this is what it's going to be. That's just it's just the way it went.
Naturally moved there.
It just naturally got there, at least for me. And I think
that
there are quite a few who have this experience. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to agree with you. I think that's the normal way. And like, I have this hunch that the science has been moving in the wrong direction for so long that
You can say that.
we don't even truly understand how and why we are so hormonally adapted to. Do you know how when they're talking about some of the high carb, high sugar foods, you've heard them say things like, oh, these food scientists have matched the sugar content in this to make it as addictive as possible.
Yeah, bliss point is, I think, what they talk about.
What is it called?
Bliss point.
Bliss point. Interesting.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I've actually noticed the same thing with steak. And I experienced it in myself first. But now, where I've kind of had a hunch that there's something more going on, is I've watched my almost 5-year-old girl become very aggressive about her need for steak because I've been feeding her so consistently that rare steak. And as she ate more and more steak, then she started wanting it rare. And now, like, she won't eat chicken. She won't even put it in her mouth. And at least once a day, she wants her steak. So clearly there's some hormonal desire based on her need to feel satiated, her satiety, to get that steak. Yet we have no science produced at all that actually says, the fat content and the protein content and the hemoglobins, because a lot of people are kind of addicted to science and getting confirmation for our health from science. Yet so little of it exists when it comes to steak. But I'm sure there's something special going on.
It really seems quite patchy to even at the best of times. And I think the point is probably that there isn't any money in funding, or there's not enough money in funding studies to do this unless it's done, unless you go out and set it up. But there are no organizations. There's no Nestle. There's no Unilever. There's no P&G. Or anyone else who's going to finance that. And it seems to me that the guys, I had a talk with a friend of mine here who had he's been doing some presentations to some of the meat producers here, and his opinion is that the reason that they are not pushing meat products aggressively, they're advertising a lot, but most of it is processed stuff. The reason they're not doing it is because they're afraid, because it's not in the trend, so they're afraid it's gonna backfire on them. So, and they're definitely not going to finance any meat is good for you studies. That's for sure.
They won't. Wow.
But anyway, I guess the point is, my takeaway from that is that although we might feel that that everything is clear, there are millions of people for whom it is not clear, or billions. but there are potentially hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people that we can actually reach and that we can actually help. And I think that's what's interesting to me. The billions who cannot be reached, and the vegans and whatever, who cares? They are not they're not our target audience, and it doesn't really, we can't save everyone. But I think it's worth making the effort to save as many as we can. What else? But I just wanted to ask you, what were your kind of main takeaways from our talk with Paul? What new impulses did you get from that?
Well, I have this hunch that, the frog in the boiling pot of water.
Yeah.
And I have this hunch that I've forgotten how free a society should feel. And there's so many little indications in my current culture I live in Western Canada, just how the schools communicate with me about, what I'm obligated to do as far as kids' lunches. And so I kind of have this low grade feeling of something's wrong all the time. And based on the conversation with Paul, there's other entrepreneurs and there's other people in the world who've obviously felt this also, and they've fled and they've picked a place like Paraguay. So, I mean, I have this sense that it's a completely different place. It's, culturally, technologically, it's in a different era. So I'm eager. I'm in 2024. My goal is to do some carnivore trips, and I want to do a carnivore trip, and then I want to get to South America, and I want to start exploring because, well, I could tell you, when I hear about governments like in New York City saying that they're going to put a moratorium on steak consumption.
Yeah, that's nuts.
That's only a few degrees different than what Stalin did to the Ukrainians in the 20s and 30s. That's where it starts. If they it's one thing to sell us a whole bunch of garbage food. That's one thing. It's another thing to tell us that we can't eat the foods that we want.
Yeah, sure. That's very, very serious indeed.
Very serious.
And unacceptable, of course.
Unacceptable.
I think my takeaways from I liked the very nice talk with Paul.
Yeah.
I think my kind of key takeaways were that if you have a business which is geographically independent, so let's call it an online business or some other business that you can service remotely, at least part of the time, then that's a good, let's say, entrepreneurial basis to have. So you need to have an income stream somehow so that you can live there, and probably not expect to have an income stream from doing things in Paraguay, at least not as a let's say as a basis. Who knows what can develop, but not as the working thesis, so to speak. And I think the other thing, everything. I mean, it seems that it's an affordable place to be. Probably you can spend a fortune on some of those new condos and new apartments and other things, but probably you can have a very nice lifestyle over there for much less money than in most Western countries. And then the last thing was just that I think to get through, if a decision is made, my recommendation would be to anyone, go and visit the place first for sure.
Oh,
Use talk to Paul and Cam, and I think I'm pretty sure they have a good setup and can take care of helping you through whatever formalities there are. I have no idea how bureaucratic or unbureaucratic Paraguay is. It seems to be, my feeling from this discussion and from other things I've heard and seen, is that it's not super bureaucratic, but it's he was talking about it being ruled by this party ever since Stroessner departed, and low taxes and let's say low touch government. So my guess would be it's not super bureaucratic. My experience from Brazil is Brazil is absolutely amazingly bureaucratic. It's phenomenally complex to do contracts and to do anything in Brazil. So for doing business, when you're doing multi-million-dollar deals, selling equipment and this kind of thing, it's just a complete nightmare. I'm hoping that that Paraguay is different, but it sounds like it's pretty different. So
there's exploration on the horizon, that I know.
Yeah, exactly. So I think very, very nice. A lot of food for thought, a lot of impulse for sure.
Yeah, and it's nice to I like to hear about other countries where steak is a big part of their culture and how it's operating.
Yeah.
So it's interesting for me. I got to get the kids ready for school now.
All right, but then get the kids to school, and
yes, sir.
Look, and we'll continue. I see it's getting light as well outside for you. It's getting dark here, so